Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while today. We've got a bit of a treat. Last week, myself, Leo and Dave won the AOR 9 hours of Donington, and I thought I'd show you our quali laps. Bit of a comparison between me and Leo. It's around Donington Park. We've got 10 kilos of ballast on board, and you know what? This is the first time that we've driven the Porsche. And in the race we had such a good setup. It was a mixed sort of weather setup. The rain was dry and wet, and that's available below if you need it. Do subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. But as you can see, it was the smallest of winning margins. But let's dive into a quali comparison. The car is lethal on low fuel, so really difficult to hook up a lap. They ended up 36 thousandths away from each other. So let's look at my lap first. Come down into the first corner, you need to flick over to the left-hand side of the track, use the exit of the pit lane, turning in as late as you can, getting that nose in the car nice and straight, and then get on the power nice and early. Keep that steering straight as you exit. This car's all about squatting down on exit of the corner and then really firing out of it. Through the old hairpin, nice and wide on entry, flick the nose in and straight back on the power. You can probably get away with running a little bit more road there on the exit on these quali laps, not in the race though, so we'll use pressure. Super difficult braking interior, and actually I get a bit of a twitch and then I get nervous and I stamp on the throttle a bit more, the brake a bit more, so a little bit of a mistake through there. Brake on the little black mark on the curb, throw the car in on the power nice and smoothly so you get the back of the car rotated round, but you don't break traction, so you get a clean run onto this back straight. Then into the chicane, the dreaded chicane, just over the top of the crest. Throw the car in, don't get a penalty, and floor it and hope, essentially, through there. Nice and clean on exit, looking for the black mark again on the left-hand side. Nice and straight under braking, bleed off the brake really smoothly. Nice on the power, sort of 2/3 power as you get the back end of the car rotated, and then on to full power, obviously, as you accelerate up into the hill. Just after the bump on the right-hand side. Probably took it a little bit tighter than I'm used to through there, just a little bit of nerves, and away we go across the line. So that's mine, 1:25.800. That was the lap time. Let's have a look at Leo's. A nice setup, a little bit of a trick you can do there, and across the line now. He's going to do the same thing, shifting us slightly earlier than I do, and when we put them side by side you'll see that in more detail. It takes a much wider line in to turn one and turns sharper earlier than I do. Again, clean on the power, using all the curb on the exit, just flowing, keeping the car nice and smooth down into the old hairpin. Again, stays nice and wide on entry, down into third again, probably turns in slightly later than I do, doesn't use as much road. Little bit of time lost there, potentially, but it's much cleaner through this section. Okay, so he gets the braking much cleaner on the left-hand side of the track, throws the nose in, and where he's turning I was still kind of on the brake a little bit and getting a bit nervous. Again, on that black mark, Leo changing down to second gear on entry to get the nose in, and then stamping on the throttle to get the back end rotated. That short shift up into third though keeps that power nice and stable. Again, into the chicane, a little bit over the crest, down into third gear, bleeds off the brakes nicely, and again, as soon as you feel the car gripping, you've got to floor it through there to keep the momentum. Really nice and straight on the brakes. You see how Leo hugs that curb on the left-hand side a lot closer than I do to get a straighter run out of this corner and into the last one as well. Takes a slightly wider line, slows down more, holds that brake a lot longer into the corner, but cuts back tightly and gets that run out of the corner. Really close, but two pretty good laps. As you can see, we were 6th and 7th overall. Couple of tenths off the top guys, but that's nothing to worry about at this stage. And as you saw, a couple of mistakes in each lap. Let's put them side by side. So I think this will be really interesting for you guys. So Leo short shifting a little bit here, which is quite interesting, and again taking that wider line into turn one. You can see how we pick up the power really similarly. I'm a little bit smoother on the steering, so it's me on the right here and Leo on the left. Through the old hairpin, this is quite interesting actually. So both take a similar line down into third gear at similar points. I take a little bit more room on exit, but actually Leo carries just as much speed through there. I hold it in fourth gear a little bit longer, and this is where the mistake comes. I take a much narrower line into here, and although I get to the apex of the corner quicker, I oversteer on the exit and I lose 1.5, 2 tenths as we'll dive into the telemetry in a bit. Leo scrabbling for grip out of there, so completely different style from me through there, because he flicked it down into second gear, so a lot different there. The hairpin, I'm really good through the hairpin here. It's really similar. I don't turn as much. Leo jabs the car in there, and I think that just gives him a little bit of unsettles the car slightly. I keep it in fourth there, Leo up to fifth, and again Leo taking a much tighter turning line through there, but coming in from a wider angle. Accelerating up the hill, roughly the same in the gears. Braking a little bit later from Leo, he's a little bit wider. Turns tighter later in the corner, and then we both get that exit on to the start-finish straight. Really interesting to see side by side. Let's have a look at the telemetry, and I'll show you exactly where those differences are, and we can break it down again. So, the first thing to note here then is obviously we're in Motec, we're not in RST, and I'd like to point out before we get into anything that at this point I was on my G920 pedals using clutch, and they were just they're just braking. Essentially, they still worked absolutely fine, but as you'll see from the brake telemetry, they're a little bit funky in the way that they come across. It's nothing, terribly serious. It's just that, they just flicker a little bit. The connection wasn't that great. Since I've got new pedals, which is pretty cool. So let's dive in. So I am the colourful lines, and Leo is the white line. At the top here, you've got the variance between the two laps. So when the line goes below 0, it means that Leo is catching up or going ahead, and when it goes above 0, it means that I'm ahead. Funnily enough, it does actually say that I finished the lap behind Leo, but I don't. So just a little bit of a quirk in the software there. So let's zoom in on turn 1 and whoops, and get a bit of an idea of what's going on here. Okay, so this obviously is the speed. This blue graph, the throttle is the green, and the brake trace is the red. You can see there my funny braking. It's not my foot, honestly. It doesn't usually look like this, just the pedals. So what actually happens is our braking is pretty similar. Leo comes off the brake a lot earlier than I do on turn in, so he's off the brake by this point. And I'm still at sort of 66 odd % braking here, but trailing off rapidly here. I'm jabbing the throttle a little bit more as well, so I'm keeping the front of the nose a bit more stable. So Leo gets that early rotation, and that enables him to get on the power much earlier. So I have this waiting phase in between here and when I get on the power. Leo's already up at 63% throttle, but because he's put it on earlier, it has to be more progressive with the way he puts his throttle on. But ultimately we get to full throttle about the same time, and ultimately as well that gains Leo some time. By the end of that straight, by the end of the old hairpin, he's just about 0.074 ahead, which not a lot, but on one corner, that's quite considerable. Let's zoom into the old hairpin then, and this is where I gain that time right back. So we're dead heat after this corner, and you can see the main difference is that I just brake slightly later than Leo. You see this speed difference here between the two graphs is 6.9 miles an hour. That's considerable on corner entry, and it is simply that I brake slightly later and I trail off slightly smoother, and I still get to full power at the same time as Leo. In fact, I jab the throttle a little bit in the middle here as well. But all of that, just a slightly tighter line. You can see that Leo actually gets a bit more oversteer angle, a bit more slip angle here. So all of these things combine to him not using all of the track at this corner, and I end up using all of the track. So not a massive difference, but one to be noted. Now here's the big section where things start to change. Let's highlight this. So we're coming up the straight we've just come from the old hairpin, and we're coming up into that area where I made that bit of a mistake. And first of all, let's just look at the speed graph here. So I end up losing 8 miles an hour on corner entry, and as we know, I end up turning in tighter. So not only am I losing that speed on entry, I'm turning tighter, so I lose it all on exit as well. And actually I end up being from dead heat to 0.187, 0.186 down by the time we get to the next right hand. Okay, so I have to end up holding on to the brake longer, turning tighter, and you can see Leo's slip angle is higher again, so he's on the limit of the car, more on entry. But then I get that kick of oversteer, which I'm not expecting. Get scared and jab the brake again, so I actually end up oversteering almost the other way, which isn't ideal really at all. And obviously Leo's he's actually slower to full power than me, but I get that huge oversteer moment, which means I have to correct the steering. So not ideal really. As I said, almost 2/10 for me lost there. I gain a little bit back through this corner. As you can see, we've got completely different styles here. Leo drops into second gear for this corner. I keep it in third. I managed to maintain just a few miles an hour, so 4 or 5 miles an hour, fasten him through the apex, which I think is probably just a to do with not changing down an extra gear. Our brake trace is virtually identical, which is great to see, but the main difference is that Leo bleeds on that power really cleanly here, whereas because I'm in a higher gear, I can afford to just jab on the power. And in fact, I get up to almost full power at the same time as him. I just have a little bit of nerve where I'm on sort of 95% power, but we're basically there. And I start to gain that time back, and by the end of the straight, having been 0.187 down, I'm now 0.139 down. And this is where the real changes happen. Okay, so through the chicane, it's a really key area of the track. If we just highlight the whole of this last sector, so coming into the chicane, you can see actually our brake and our throttle traces are really similar. The thing is that I brake slightly later than Leo, so I'm sort of 3.5-4 miles an hour quicker than him through the first part of the apex. But the main thing I want to get across to you guys is these steering angles and the oversteer angles down here. Okay, so you can see first of all, if we take the orange graph, my steering angle is a lot smoother than Leo's here, so he jabs that steering in, and we saw it in the video in the comparison, really yanks the steering into the first part of the chicane. Because of that, it's a little bit more unsettled. You can see again his slip angles are much higher on both the left and the right hand side of the chicane, whereas mine, the yellow line, are a lot smoother through there. So it just allows me to maintain that little bit extra speed through there. Our throttle and braking trace is virtually identical. And you can see I gain all of that time back and some. So we're neck and neck, 0.1 ahead, 0.01 ahead or so. This is where Leo, he gains a little bit back. Okay, so he actually gains another 1/10 or so. Well, half a 1/10 or so through this corner by the end of the straight. So we have contrasting styles. Leo turns in a little bit later than I do, but I turn in from a sharper angle. So I need that steering lock earlier in the process. And you can see I'm actually turning for longer. Our throttle traces basically identical, although Leo can get straight back on full power immediately. I have a sort of 2/3 as I'm getting the back end of the car round, and then I'm at full throttle. But our speed trace is virtually identical, sort of 1 mile an hour in it, until we get to the last corner. And this is where contrasting styles completely come in. Again, I'm turning earlier and I'm turning sharper than Leo is in both of these, although my trace is probably smoother, you'd say. I'm not on the limit of the car as much. Leo ends up slowing down more than me, but his minimum speed is actually after me in the corner. If we just hone in on this final corner, you can see that my minimum speed here is higher. It's 38.9 miles an hour, whereas Leo's is slightly later on in the corner, 35.8, but he managed to fire himself out of that corner just as quick. Okay, look at the brake, the acceleration throttle traces again. I get on the power slightly earlier, but only that sort of 50% when I rotate the back of the car, and then I sort of gather up to this 100% here. But there's all of this gap in between the green line and the white line here, where Leo's on full throttle and he gets a much better exit. You can also see from the brake trace as well, he carries that brake in a lot nicer. There's my funky braking trail once more. The steering again, you know, Leo on the edge a little bit more, feeling that force feedback more than I can. Overall, a super similar lap. Just so similar, style slightly different. Big mistake from me, a couple of small mistakes from Leo, especially on the long right-hander onto the back straight, and that was the difference at the end of the day. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I know it's been a little while since I've posted anything, but if you like these video comparisons as that comparisons, then let me know in the comments, give me that thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next one. I've got another one of these to do. We ended up winning this race. It was all in all just a fantastic day. I'll put a link as well to the AOR stream. It's well worth watching the final hour, because it was just, we were on tenterhooks the whole time, just heart pounding. First big race win like that for a long time, so absolutely awesome. Until the next one, guys, see you then.